Hey up everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all staying inside and looking after yourself. Today's video is going to be my greatest ever Penrith Panthers team between 1967 and 2019. As we all know, Penrith Nick from Australia's favourite team, so he's going to love watching this video. So before I get into the video, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of the club, give you a bit of history if you don't know that much about Penrith. And then we're going to get into the team, 1 through to 17, starting with the fullback. And I'll also give you the coach. So, Penrith, they were one of 2 clubs to be admitted into the New South Wales Rugby League in 1967, along with Cronulla. They had a very tough time of it in the early years of their existence in the New South Wales Rugby League. They didn't make the finals between 1967 and 1984. They made their first finals appearance in 1985. Their first grand final appearance didn't come until 1990, where they lost to Canberra. The following year, they changed their whole jersey design from a brown and white strip, as they were known before as the Chocolate Soldiers, and they changed to the black with the white stripes and the 3 other colours to make the Licorice All-Stars. That was their nickname in the 90s. They won their first premiership in 1991 against Canberra. In 1992, unfortunately, tragedy struck the club with Ben Alexander dying in a car crash. It almost tore the club apart. Most of the players that played in that side all left in the coming years. Between 1992 and 2000, the club only made the finals twice. And in 2003, they won their second premiership under the coaching of John Lang. Since then, Penrith haven't really looked like winning another premiership. They've come close on 2 occasions in 2004 and 2014, but they haven't made a grand final appearance since 2003. So that's my brief overview of the club. And now we're going to get into the team. So I'm just going to go get my list here. And starting off at fullback, I've decided to go for Rhys Wesser. So Rhys Wesser, he came from Queensland and he played 178 matches for the club and scored a club record 113 tries. I had the pleasure of growing up watching Rhys Wesser play. Very quick, very elusive. He probably could have played more games for Queensland, but he had some pretty esteemed company alongside him, like Billy Slater, Darren Lockyer, in that fullback spot. But tonight, he gets me spot in the Penrith team. On the left wing, I've gone for Luc Rooney. Luc Rooney played alongside Rhys Wesser in that 2003 Premiership winning side. He actually scored the winning try in that grand final over Eastern Suburbs. He played 140 matches for the club in the 2000s, and then he left to go play rugby union. He also represented New South Wales and Australia, so he gets me left wing spot. At left centre, I've gone for Ryan Girdler. Ryan Girdler played 204 matches for the club, and he holds the record as the highest point scorer. He won that premiership in 2003. He also represented New South Wales and Australia. I used to love watching Ryan Girdler when I was growing up playing. He was a great centre, great goal kicker, and a very likeable person off the field. I remember him being on the Footy Show a couple of times. He had a segment on there. So he gets me spot for left centre. At right centre, I've gone for Freddie Fittler. Now, Brad Fittler's in one of my other greatest ever teams, Eastern Suburbs. But tonight I've got him at right centre because if you didn't know, he started his career at centre before he moved to 5'8", and he played at centre in the 1991 Premiership victory over Canberra. Freddie Fittler played 119 games for Penrith before moving to Eastern Suburbs in the mid-1990s. So tonight he gets me spot at right centre. On the right wing, I've gone for Luke Lewis. Luke Lewis, as you all know, he could play any position on the park. He was Mr. Fix-It, Mr. Utility Man. But for tonight, I'm going to pick him at right wing. He played a total of 208 games for Penrith in the 2000s. He was part of that 2003 winning premiership. And he also represented New South Wales and Australia on the wing whilst he was playing for Penrith. I think after they won the Premiership, he switched to a couple of other positions before I ended up in the second row lock. But tonight I've got him on the wing. At 5'8", I've chosen Preston Campbell. He played 96 games for Penrith in the 2000s. He come from Cronulla, where he won the Dally M. He was part of that 2003 Premiership winning side. He was a fantastic player, Preston Campbell. A joy to watch, immensely talented. And he gets me spot at 5'8". At halfback, I've gone for Gregor Alexander, or as he's known by his nickname, Brandy. Gregor Alexander was one of the first ever homegrown talents from Penrith that actually went through all the grades, ended up representing Australia, New South Wales. He played 228 games for the club, and he scored 100 tries and over 1,000 points for the club as well. He was part of that 1991 Premiership winning side. After the death of his brother in 1992, as he said in his biography and on a few other videos, he said that basically the next couple of years he was in autopilot mode. He wasn't really feeling it anymore. He ended up going to Auckland before coming back to Penrith to finish his career. But he gets me spot at halfback. The props, I've gone for Paul Clarke and Tony Puletua. So Paul Clarke, he played over 80 matches for the club in the 1980s and 1990s. He was part of that 1991 Premiership winning side. And Tony Puletua, he was one of the club's longest serving players. He won the 2003 Premiership with the club as a second rower alongside Joe Mullival. They were known as the Air Bears. But he also played a lot of prop for the club, and that's where I've chosen him tonight. As I said, he was one of the loyalest players to ever have played for Penrith, played over 200 matches, so he's a no-brainer to be in my team. At hooker, I've chosen Royce Simmons. Royce, he played 238 matches for the club. He played for the club in the 1980s and the early 90s. He stuck with them through all those tough years in the early 80s. And then he played for the club in the 1990 grand final loss, and then he scored 2 tries in the 1991 grand final over Canberra, including the winner, where he scored in the corner. I'm sure that you've all watched the replay of that. He's also the captain of this side. After he retired, Royce Simmons ended up coaching the club for a number of years. He's Penrith through and through, Royce Simmons, so he gets me spot at hooker. The second rowers, I've gone for John Cartwright and Mark Geyer. So John Cartwright played for the club in the 1980s and 1990s. He won that Premiership with them in 1991, so he gets one of my spots. The other second rower goes to Mark Geyer, MG. He played for the club in the 1980s, 1990s. He set up 2 tries in the 1991 grand final, including the winner, where he got the ball from the drop restart and run it. Mal Meninga swiveled, passed it to Royce Simmons, and Royce Simmons scored in the corner. After the death of Ben Alexander, Mark Geyer was one of the players that took the death the hardest. He ended up leaving the club as a result. He went to Belmean, Western Reds, and then he come back to Penrith where he finished his career. But in his prime, he played for New South Wales, and he was a very tough, aggressive forward. So he gets me spot at second row. And at lock, I've gone for Colin van der Voort. Colin van der Voort played for the club in the same era, the 80s and 90s. He played at lock in that 1991 grand final victory over Canberra, so he gets me spot at lock. And on the bench, the first player I've picked is Luc Prentice. Luc Prentice played 162 matches for the club in the 2000s. He come from Brisbane, where he'd won a Premiership. He won that 2003 grand final with the club, and he was named the Clive Churchill medalist in that match. He was a great servant of Penrith, and he was one of the best hookers in the competition at the time, so Luc Prentice gets me spot on the bench. My second bench spot goes to Craig Gower. Gower played 238 matches for the club in the 1990s and 2000s. He was one of the favourite sons of Penrith. He won that premiership with them in 2003. I could have had him at halfback, but I decided to go with Gregor Alexander, so Gower's going to have to settle for the bench. My third bench spot goes to Steve Carter. Steve Carter played for the club in the 1980s and 1990s. He holds the record appearances for the club with 244. He won a premiership with them in 1991. So I had to have him in the team somewhere, and tonight I've got him on the bench. And my last spot goes to Scott Sattler. Scott Sattler played 118 games for the club, but in the 1990s and 2000s he was voted Clubman of the Year in 2001. In the 2003 Grand Final he pulled off one of the greatest tackles in the modern history of the game, where he run from one side of the field to the other and tackled Todd Bain over the sideline. In my opinion, I think if Scott Sattler doesn't make that tackle, Penrith don't go on to win that grand final. It's an iconic moment in rugby league. He was a very loyal player for Penrith. He gave his all for the club when he was there. So I decided to go for him on the bench. And at coach, there was a couple of choices I could have gone for. I could have gone for Phil Gould. I could have gone for a few of the other people that have coached the club. But I've chosen John Lang. John Lang coached the club to that 2003 grand final victory over Eastern Suburbs. He come from Cronulla Sutherland, where he coached for a number of years. I've decided to go with John Lang because when he took over the club in 2002, in 2001 they finished as wooden spooners. So we got him out of that danger zone. So in 2 years he took him from wooden spooners to premiers, and then in 2004 the club almost went back to back, where they reached the preliminary final but were defeated by Canterbury. So I've decided to go with John Lang over Phil Gould, because when Phil Gould took over the club, Penrith had made the finals the year before, and Ron Willey had kind of designed that club how he wanted it, and Phil Gould inherited the club, whereas John Lang took over a club that were wooden spooners. So that's a bit of a mouthful. That's me Penrith team, greatest ever Penrith team from 1967 to 2019. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving this video a like. If you're enjoying the content that I'm making, I've done a couple of other greatest ever team videos. Make sure you click that subscribe button and click that notification bell so you get an email when I do a new video. And also, if you've got some time, go over to Rugby League History. That's my Facebook page. I'll put a link in the description below. I'll be making another greatest ever team tomorrow, so stay tuned for that one. But as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you all later. Ta-ra.